Okay, we're going to go ahead and tie Cicada. Oh, you guys, there we go. Size 6 is what we're going to use. 6/0 black thread. First thing we're going to do is go ahead and get a little dubbing wax. Go ahead and run that on there. So what we want to do is put a good underneath of the fly. Give it some color on the bottom side instead of just plain old black. Cicada's got a little bit of reddish and bluish and greenish and all kinds of other tints to them, depending on sunlight. You just want a good amount that you can run pretty much back 2/3 of the hook to get a nice covering on it for your color. It doesn't matter what that looks like back there because you're going to go right over it. Okay, that looks pretty ugly, but that's the way it should look. What we got here, close cell foam. It's already been cut, about a 1/4 inch strip. Go ahead and take that and run it to a tip like that, and go ahead and cinch it in. Overhang the hook just a little bit. What you're going to do now is go ahead and cinch down all that dubbing so it doesn't disappear on you in the water, and then go ahead and get the last piece in there. So what you'll end up with is a segmented body right there like that, with the red on the underneath. Next piece of it, we're going to add legs. This is just simple living rubber. We're going to use blue for this. Legs are optional on these. You really don't have to do them, but for some reason on the green it seems to make a difference. Next piece we're going to grab is some of this material, which is nothing more than Easter egg decoration, and we're going to go ahead and just cut a strip. I'll show you what it looks like after I get it cut. So that piece of strip, you can see the iridescent, that's going to more mimic the natural wings associated with the cicada. And then you're going to want to go ahead and trim this at an angle so that it flares out on the back side. And you can trim this once it's actually in there better, but for now you just want to trim it down so you get something to tie into. But I always double it over. This stuff will tend to fray, which is a good thing. The more it frays, it actually is the better that works. Cinch that in good. Okay. See how that just lays across the back. Run up. Cinch down again. And go ahead and grab a chunk of Antron yarn. I'd already cut these. I always cut bunches of them because I put them on a ton of different flies. They're nothing more than something for me to see a good strike indicator. These work essentially well in rough water. And go ahead and double that back depending on how much you need so you can actually see the fly. And pull back and go ahead and make yourself a nice little head. It doesn't have to be a big one. And that's basically all there is to it. A little trimming and tidying up, and that's it. Make sure that you do use a little super glue on the bottom of these so that everything holds tight, because these will tend to flip in the water, which is not a big deal. After every fish you're going to want to recoat it anyway. But nice big piece there. And a little trim there. Fix your legs and then super glue on the bottom. But that's kind of what you want. Nice big indicator, lots of flash on top. Simple pattern. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to tie another big fly. Specifically what we're going to do is use the same fly. I have trouble getting that in focus, but that's okay. There we go. Oh, nice. Size 6, we're going to use the same thing. We're going to go ahead and do a beadhead leech. This is going to be specifically what I use on smaller streams in Alaska for silver salmon. So you'll notice the way I got the hook put in there. There's a reason for that. As your eyes get older, it's easier to have something that holds steady so you can actually get the bead on there, and then you can go ahead and move your fly into the vise. Works essentially well with small flies, but it also works great for the larger ones too. What I'm going to do with this one, since we're going to be tying a black and purple woolly booger, is we're going to go ahead and lay a base of thread. Most people call this an egg-sucking leech. Basically in Alaska this is just a woolly booger because everything's got an egg associated with it, since that's what most of the fish key on. This is also a great rainbow trout fly on most of the rivers up there. Excuse me, I'm looking for this. Specifically on this fly we're going to use 030 lead, so you can see that good. Basically we're going to cinch in maybe we are. Cinch it in from the back. We're going to do a double wrap around the head so it's weighted even more towards the front. I'll trim this up after. I like a base of thread so that the lead tends not to move around. It gives us something on the hook shank to go ahead and cinch to. These are loose for a reason. If I was doing 020 lead, I would specifically do these tighter. But you can see how I'm wrapping tight against that. I want that to be the base where it sits against. Okay, and then taper back like that. This is a no-no for your scissors, but don't cut lead. Go ahead and just key that around with your fingernail and go ahead and cinch it in tight. This is a heavy fly. Next, what we're going to do is just grab a piece of marabou. On this one we're going to use just one tuft, and I like to use just the end of it specifically. Go ahead and get a good measurement. You can kind of see on your fly where it specifically needs to go, and tie it behind the lead so that it lays down against the hook shank. You can see how that lays perfect there. And then what you want to do on this is go ahead and take that and wrap it around the lead like that. And I'll tell you why, because it fills in all those voids, which helps your fly not twist. Okay? Looks pretty ugly, don't it? Should. Next, with this fly, what we're going to do is tie in some longer hackles. These are specifically what I like to use as purple on these to give it a different contrast. So you can kind of see there what we're dealing with. And this one, where it actually starts to get consistent, is up towards the tip. So I'm going to get off a lot of this larger stuff which has got more webbing in it. And I do this with my fingers. You can actually cut it, but just peel that back like that, if that makes sense to you. Peel those hackle fibers back and then get your tip in there to cut. And tie that in really tight. Doesn't hurt to throw a half hitch in. You can either do this with hair or specifically with this, what I'm using here. This is actually a yarn from the craft store. I don't think you can buy it anymore. It was from about 40 years ago, but specifically it's just a thick yarn. It's like a chenille that you can buy in the fly stores now, but it's got a strong fiber in it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this tight. It's going to be really bulky, which is fine. Okay, what you want to do with this fly is see how it kind of just tapers up just a little bit towards the head. And that's ideal for the way that the leeches actually grab and hold on to an egg. And this is only going to be 3 wraps with the feather. And I just pulled that off of there. Snip it. You can do that with your scissors or whatever. And then just wrap ahead right behind, so you make sure your bead's cinched up tight, and go ahead and whip finish it. That's it. And this gives enough of a gap that you're not constantly snagging on the bottom, and it will tend to ride more towards the hook up. With the way this is set up with all the lead towards the head, it'll actually point it up. So a lot less snags doing it this way than if you just are uniform throughout the entire length of the fly.
Okay, you're good to go.
I'm good to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Today we're going to tie some big flies. What we'll start with is how's that? Size 6. We're going to tie some cicadas for specifically the Green River. Start with black 6/0 thread. You can use flat waxed or whatever. Doesn't matter. First thing we're going to do is throw some dubbing on here. I want the underneath to be kind of a rust color to give off somewhat of a reflection on the water. I don't have any oils in my fingers from washing them so much right now, so I got to use dubbing wax. Just put a good amount because we want a nice belly to show through on the bottom of this. Basically about 2/3 all the way back. Once it starts to wrap tight, you can just grab it there and start pulling it around. That's basically all you want right there. Next thing we're going to do, get a piece of foam. This is closed cell foam. Open cell obviously will just absorb the water, but take, depending on the size of your fly, I don't know if that helps to be able to see. For a size 6, you're going to want to go almost 1/4 wide, and go ahead and take it cut it at an angle, make a nice little tip on the end, like so. Take it, we're going to wrap it in so it overhangs off the back. Go ahead and cinch it down pretty tight because this is going to want to roll. Already got everything underneath, so just pull it forward like that. You're going to go to where you want your legs. Nice and simple right there. You look underneath the fly, this is what you're going to get. What I got here is actually living rubber. You can buy the legs at the fly store if you want, but living rubber you can get for bass jigs and stuff like that. It's going to be immensely cheaper. Go ahead and just pull that tight. Doesn't have to be too. You're going to move them around a little bit. You're going to do both sides. Don't need a lot of legs, just something else to put a little movement while it's sitting on the water. Go ahead and cinch them down, and then you can kind of tighten them up or whatever. Go ahead and run it forward all the way to the eye. Once again, cinch it down. This piece you're going to want to go ahead and wrap tight. What we're going to do here is take some Antron yarn. You can use whatever you like for a strike indicator. Doesn't matter the color, whatever you can see on the water. Something that's going to overhang the legs a little bit. Cinch that in tight, pull it back, because what we're going to do is pull the foam back and create a nice little head on this thing. Okay, that's basically all there is to this. It's a quick cicada pattern. When I tie the next one, I'm going to show you different twists that you can use associated with this. What you want to do is go ahead and use super glue on this thing on the bottom. Head cement's fine, but it's not going to hold up near as much as super glue. Go ahead and just trim your wings up. You just want something you can see. If you're blind or getting old, make a nice big one. That's basically all there is to it. Okay? Alright. With the next one, I'm going to show you how to tie in just a indicator wing, because if you've ever seen a cicada, they have a iridescent wing on them, and sometimes the fish will key in on that depending on the color and light. Especially in low light conditions, they'll specifically look for that on the water, because there's too many fishermen throwing big dries at them. They'll look for something just a little bit different. This is just to glob it on. Okay, once again, that's just to make another body associated with that. We've already got a piece that's already been cut from the last fly, so what we're going to do is just trim the tip on that. Create a nice little tip. Overhang it, pinch it down good, make sure you do cinch it down. Once again, wrap it up to where you want your legs. Doesn't matter if the under wraps are under there. You can dub after the fact. It's easier if you do it before. With this one, we're going to use some blue legs. Same thing here. grab a piece of living rubber, strap it on the sides. One of the things too, specifically at the green, is there are a lot of hoppers and they're all blue legs. So keep that in mind as you tie your flies. Okay. Next thing we're going to throw on, everybody gets this on their Easter baskets. Everybody throws it away. Don't. You can use it for flies. Flashback scuds, flashback pheasant tails, all of that. The nice thing about this is you don't have to be specific about it. This is all crinkled up on purpose. What we're going to do, and I'll show you this once I get it cut. Specifically take a piece like that, and yeah, it looks ratty. That's fine, because what you're going to do is go ahead and fold it. And then from there is where you're going to go ahead and cut your wings out. And go ahead and just cut a nice V. It doesn't matter really what it looks like because it's going to get rattled in the wind and casting and everything. Just cut a nice V. And we're going to trim that up once we get it on. And just wrap that down on there. It doesn't matter if it gets balled up under there at all. So you want to cinch that down good and tight. Okay? Can't see my other leg. Okay? And go ahead and wrap all the way up towards the head. Can add extra dubbing there, but what you want to do with this is the part you want to overhang. And sorry, my fingers are in the way, but I want to just cut that like that. See how that lays down across that? Okay. Once again, whatever you can see, Antron yarn is what I use. Also adds to the flotation of the fly. Okay. Pull everything back. There you go. I don't use a whip finisher, so that's my whip finish. Old school. There you go. And you can trim these up at the end if you want to make them look real pretty, but the thing is, the whole idea is that you want that iridescent stuff flopping out and laying on the water, and this will tear, which is perfect. But you can see how that overlays. That's an ideal caddis pattern right there.
Okay.
Alright, today what we're going to tie is a stonefly that I tie. What we're going to start with is size 10 200R, so this can be a size 10 golden stonefly. This is going to be a little on the complicated side, so if you're brand new to fly tying, this is not one I would recommend to start with. We're going to use yellow thread, obviously a golden stone. And there's a couple different ways to tie these. We're going to start with the thin version first without lead. Okay, Once you got your thread all the way to the back, next thing you're going to do is go ahead and grab some ginger goose biot. And these are fairly simple to put on. Basically what you want to do is hold it by the tip right here and go ahead and peel it off the back on a cross angle so that it angles down. To put the antenna on the back side, you're going to do 2 of those. Go ahead and even them up. And those you can go ahead and just wrap in. You can cut them off if you want. I tend to wrap them in when I'm not using lead. Okay? Next piece of that is we're going to go ahead and use larvalase tubing, a number of different products out there. It's easier if you just use something like this, the yellow, which is just regular larvalase. For size 10 and size 8 you can use regular. If you go smaller you're going to have to use considerably smaller tubing. What I like to do is go ahead and just clip off a section of it rather than working with a whole roll. Okay, I want to go to where I'm going to make my first carapace section, and then I'm going to go ahead and tie that in at the top, cinch it in tight, and don't stretch it quite that hard. Stretch it back. And here's where you can change the whole color and outlook of the whole stonefly. Specifically with this, you can change from a molting and put some white blotches in it. Use white thread. You can use magic markers to color this. On this one, we're just going to go ahead and wrap it in like this. Okay. And then go ahead and tie that off. And that's all you're going to need the larvalase for. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Next thing you're going to do is tie in a couple legs. Same thing, we're going to use goose biots. Specifically, we want to try and lay these as close as we can towards the end of the body section. And these are going to flare out once you do this right up against that larvalase. Go ahead and tie into them. These you're going to want to clip. We're going to glasses. Much better. Okay. Next thing we're going to use is what's called Swiss straw. You can make your wings out of Tyvek. You can use Swiss straw. Any of those things. Swiss straw has a tendency to go ahead and kind of deteriorate after about 8 or 10 fish. But by that time, generally something else has happened to your fly, so it's not that big a deal. Go ahead and tie it in, and this is where you're going to go ahead and cut your carapace. Nice and even like that. Next piece of this is to actually make a body segment right here. You can go ahead and use dubbing, or you can use furry foam. Specifically, dubbing is a little bit easier to deal with. Furry foam will tend to add quite a bit of bulk to it, which is fine if you start going 8, 6, size 4, some of the larger stones. So this, I'm actually going to use some brighter yellow super fine dubbing. This is actually for dry flies, but I just want something to cover up what I'm doing there, all the thread wraps and so forth. Run it up against the carapace there. And what you want to try and do is keep those legs back as far as you can. If they stick out too much, what will happen is you'll start to get a helicopter when you reel in the fly after a cast or after a drift. So you want to try and keep those down as far as you can, towards the body, that is. Go ahead and tie in another set of legs, obviously staggering the legs in length. Same thing here. Keep them closer to the body if you can. Any sharp angle is going to cause that fly to helicopter. Same thing, go back with Swiss straw. I have to look on the bottom to make sure I'm doing it. Go ahead and stagger your wing cases. So, repeat, dubbing. The hardest part of tying any stonefly that's going to be segmented like this is getting your proportions associated with not crowding the head and getting enough legs and so forth on the fly. So if you stick with the same type of hook every time, it's easier to gauge. If you start messing with different hooks with 2x and 3x, that's when you'll start running into trouble. And after you spend this much time tying a fly, the last thing you're going to want to do is lose it on the first cast. That's what your buddies are for. Okay. There. What you've got there so far is you got the right amount of legs, you got nice segmentation in the body and so forth. Now comes the fun part. Tying in the antenna. These can be as short or as long as you want to make them. But you want to make them so that they're opposite of the eye, so you can tie your fly on. You see how that right there specifically goes down on this side, and this one will come down on this side. What we're going to do, let's go ahead and just throw a little bit of dubbing on the head of that, and then we'll finish it off. Just enough to cover up the thread wraps and specifically where we tied in the antenna. These are a lot tougher than you give them credit for. There. Nice segmentation, good body, everything's split. Legs, you can kind of move them around a little bit, but then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you go ahead and on these big flies is go ahead and use super glue versus head cement.